Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Yes, it's me again. Good to see you guys again. We're going to continue our program. We have another PRT member who's going to be presenting, Donna Stevenson. I've known Donna our IBM days together, back in the IBM days. Donna is also a technologist. She's a technology entrepreneur. Her company is Early Morning Software, which is located in downtown Baltimore. Been in business 25, 30 years, Donna? 25 next year. 25 years in business, a quarter of a century. And does some amazing work in technology. She started out in the IT business as I did, but she has pivoted now into the software business and doing some pretty amazing things there, which she's going to talk to you about. So any of you have an interest in technology, my cybersecurity buddies over here and others who make technology, Donna Stevenson would be a wonderful mentor to have for your companies and for your professional growth. So I bring to the stage now Ms. Donna Stevenson, CEO, PRT member, but CEO of Early Morning Software. Donna, please.
Thank you, Bob. All right, all right. All I can say is I love it when a plan comes together. It's absolutely amazing how my colleagues and I have brought our presentations together and the topics to just kind of flow. And they are connecting in ways that we did not plan. But they connect because of our association with each other, the way we do business. And I sincerely talk about the way we do business as professionals with integrity, with a spiritual influence. It just makes this whole event worthwhile. So as I introduce my presentation, I believe it's just a natural progression from the topics that you already have heard today, beginning with the branding from Dr. Brooks. It's absolutely essential. What I've done in the past 8 years with my illustrious team is to create not just a brand for our company, but a brand for our product across the nation. And that was a major feat because when we started out, we were a local business, primarily doing business here in the Mid-Atlantic region, and we were known. We had the reputation, just like Tony said, you gotta have a reputation where people know your work and will recommend your work. And we were known. But then when we came up with this whole idea for the product, we knew we had to have our dreams be bigger and our platform grow. And branding was critical to that. And the product that I'm going to talk to you all about and that fuels practices that are great for small businesses today is that brand. It's Prism Compliance Management. And it is our now software brand that in 2018 will stand on its own as its own company. But then we also talked a little bit about partnerships. And in order to really grow, it's essential that we partner smartly. And I sincerely include the word smartly. So Bob just laid it all out for you guys. So I'm going to talk about partnering, but I don't have to get into the knit and grit because he just told you how important. But what I want to share with you are ways of now that you get those contracts, how do you manage them to ensure that they spur growth in your company and that you comply? Because there's a lot that I've had to learn now being a national business that I took for granted when I was a business primarily doing business here in the DMV. So just by show of hands, I need to get understanding who's in the room. How many of us are actually in business? You have a business, okay. How many of you have customers where you are the prime contractor, you are the direct supplier to that, okay. And then how many of you are subcontractors? Okay, fantastic. So as I talk about the concept, does everyone know what a prime is? Because if you put your hand up or down, that means you know who's in ranking order in charge of the project is the prime, and who you are as a sub or prime, depending on what contract you're on. So I wanted to just talk about, establish that, because it establishes the foundation for what I want to share with you. Now, one of the things, people who know me that I'm a huge Ravens fan. And in fact, if I had a purple dress, I would have worn it today. But all my jerseys and tennis shoes, they're purple on Sundays, okay? But I'm going to use some football analogies today to talk about the plays that are essential for us to have ability to grow our businesses and sustain them. So this will actually be my first presentation to vendors or suppliers like yourselves to use our product to manage your contracting processes, to manage your certifications. And this has come to me because I have begun to realize how critical, it's just as important for us to be stewards of our contracts, to know if our prime is complying, if we're a sub to the contract terms, as it is for them. A lot of folks who go into contracts where they're the MBE just make the assumption that their prime is going to do what they said because they have a contract to do what they said, and they sign paperwork that they had you sign also, right, to make sure that your business is going to be utilized to the extent that the partnership called for, right? Everybody makes that assumption in the beginning, but in reality, that's not always the way things play out. So what I want to make sure is, as I educate my clients on a daily basis, and my clients are folks like the City of Atlanta, the City of San Diego, North Texas Tollway Authority, right? There are cities and authorities that are awarding contracts to primes for the purpose of managing those contracts, and those that have minority business inclusion requirements, that the minority and women-owned businesses are actually utilized, okay? So that's what our software does. It tracks the contracts, tracks what the prime's commitment is, and then ultimately, as the contract progresses, it tracks the payments that are flowing from the City of Atlanta to that prime, and from that prime down to the subs, and from that sub to verify receipt of payment. So it's that whole flow of payment that we're following the money using our system. But most of the time, I don't teach my suppliers how to follow the money. And it just dawned on me not long ago that I was like, why should we teach them how to follow this money? It's just as much their responsibility to follow it as it is my client, right? So in 2018, I'm kind of taking off the covers and say, it's up to you whether you want to follow this. And I'm going to show you some other techniques to make sure not only do you follow it when you win, but you also follow it when you lose. Because it's just as important to understand when those solicitations come around, how can you be better the next time? Okay, so that's my preface. We're going to achieve more by utilizing our contract management processes. And in the process, I'm giving you some plays today to learn how you win and ultimately how you grow. So we're going to talk about the certification that this young lady brought up. The MBE, the DBE, the VBE, all of the BEs, why are they important and how to leverage them as tools. Talk about solicitation research and how to be able to track the research on solicitations to better position yourself to win as a sub and or as a prime. And then we're going to talk about contract and compliance management, how to make sure you stay on top of your contracts. So let's get started. Our Prism solution is made up of pretty much 10 modules today, okay? There's a vendor or supplier management module that you can utilize to track all of those relationships And that, again, that's why it's so key. Bob talked about the red, the yellow, and the green. I have a new field I'm going to go back and add to my supplier database, right? I don't have currently, I have lots and lots of information on the suppliers and businesses that I encounter, but I haven't coded them like he just described. So I'm going to actually add that to my database as a custom field, so I'll actually know the relevance of these folks that I'm encountering. But the other component that's critical is tracking the contracts that we're awarded, what compliance requirements we may have as a prime, because 90% of the time today we're a prime contractor. But we also track any cases where we're a sub and where possibly one of our partners is leading the way, and then tracking the payment on them. And that's important whether I'm a prime or a sub. I need to know where's my money, right? So we're going to go walk through the modules and technology that is relevant to you all today. So I talk about our technology enabling processes around contract management and compliance for our customers, because when they do it right, it's transformational for your businesses. So imagine you partner up and you've done your due diligence, like Bob suggested, on the companies that you're going to partner with. And then as you get into your engagement, you realize that things aren't going quite the way you had anticipated. And maybe they change a project manager out and you got a new project manager, and the person you had built your relationship with all of a sudden doesn't have the same liking for you, even though you're likable and folks prior to them liked you, but now you got someone who likes somebody else. Anybody ever experienced that? Too many hands, that's what I'm saying, right? So all of a sudden, your work where there was cooperation and assistance and ease of doing business with, all of a sudden it becomes awkward. I've had situations where my team has been working on a job site where the customer makes them uncomfortable. So imagine, having to go to work where you're received and you can get your work done. You're smart. You wouldn't be where you are if you did not have the necessary skills and were equipped to do the jobs that you've been hired to do. But then you enter an environment where they just make it difficult. And that has happened to my team, where they would show up to do compliance services and they would just be told that the work is wrong, but no justification or backup as to, well, why is it wrong? What can we correct? No feedback. It's just wrong, right? So that's when you get into those situations, it's like, So now I find myself in a situation where the folks don't like me, and they're upset with my work, but not giving me any feedback. These are real situations that occur. Which is why I talk about knowing the rules of the game and being able to monitor them yourselves and be able to use these rules to ensure that regardless of who sits in the seat of deciding whether they're going to like you or not, that you still have the ability to try to succeed in those situations. Because 90% of the time, when we get started in business, we're going to be a sub. You're going to be the business saying, can I have work? Can I get paid? I mean, that's just the reality of how it is to get started, okay? So we teach our customers to make sure that with the proper planning, that their business is available like yours, that their practices in place to make sure that they can monitor that if they've awarded a contract to IBM and they've hired SW Designs, that they have the visibility and transparency to be able to see that they are in fact utilizing. Because when they utilize SW Designs, all of a sudden she has the ability to meet payroll. And meeting payroll, that means she can have employees who can have consistent livelihoods just like the people that IBM has. So it can spur growth, not just for IBM, that business, but also the community in general, which is why the opportunity, when we talk about an MBE program, it's not just MBE inclusion. We have an ability to transform communities because SW Design is likely to hire from some of the communities that IBM might not hire from. So when you talk to folks about the MBE program, you want to help them understand the economic impact of the programs as well. So let me get to this. So we're going to talk about certifications. How many folks are MBE certified? Okay. So oftentimes I had this conversation with myself. I was like, Donna, you really want to be MBE certified because the same reasons that this young lady talked about earlier. It's like, why should they have to know all my financials, right? Like she said, my mama and my daddy black, and they both look like it, so why can't they just take from what I look like? Well, I am a little fair, but you know. In fact, because my children, aside, you know, I digress a minute, but my children and my husband say I'm white. But that's because they're just darker than me. But the reality is, sometimes there is should we be an MBE? Should we have to expose all of our information when it's the same transparency is not there for our white-owned firms? They don't have to expose that. So you really don't know what size those firms are because no one's checked that level of scrutiny and review of their backgrounds, okay? So sometimes it can be construed as a tool that would hurt you. I will share with you from experience, I grew my business leveraging the program. And so the important thing I want to share with you is to know what MBE type you should be depending on the community or the environment that you're in, and then use it as a tool rather than a crutch, right? So like I said, 90% of my business today, I'm a prime contractor, so that many of them care that I'm an MBE, but it really doesn't matter, okay? But when I started out and I had $5,000 in a dream, oh yeah, the MBE program was the way to go because it gave me my entree when Verizon sat down and said, oh, I won this contract and I need some great minority-owned businesses to work with me. Then I was able to say, well, we're one of those great businesses that happens to be certified as a minority-owned business. Okay, so you want to pick the certification. So depending on, again, if you're in the city of DC, they don't have an MBE program. They have a CBE program. So you have to know if you're going to do business in DC, what are the parameters? If you're going to have do business with transportation, am I going to be a DBE? The other thing you need to know is what services do you need to be qualified for, okay? So when you get certified, many of the organizations are going to say you're eligible to do electrical services. That's what CalMy Electric does. And if he came back and said, hey, you know what? I want to do concrete work. And they would look at his repertoire of past performance and they would tell him, I'm sorry, I know you'd like to do concrete, but there's nothing in your background that says you would be successful at that. Now, it doesn't mean he can't do it, just means he won't qualify to do it as a minority business enterprise. He can go out and get those calls and come back. So it's important as you are pursuing work is to understand the work that you're pursuing, what NAICS codes or industry classification have they defined for that work. And then you have to look at your certification and say, do I have the classifications that they're specifying? And if I don't, can I get them? Okay, you can always expand your services. You're still going to go through a qualifying process, but you need to know that it takes 90 days to get an expansion. So when someone releases an RFP and says, oh, this is going to require IT code 541611, if you don't have it, and that RFP is out right now, the likelihood that you can team with that company is unlikely because no one's going to expand your services that fast. But if you're in your planning mode, as I'll talk about in a moment, you'll know to expand in advance so that you're ready with the right qualifications. And then the next thing that's important is just managing those certifications. When do they expire? I have over 20 certifications throughout the country. Can you imagine the administrative nightmare to keep up with all of them? Getting letters, sometimes not even letters, getting emails that go to my junk and my spam folders. And I only look up and I realize, ooh, what they sent me officially was that I'm no longer certified. That came in the mail. But the emails may have gone to my junk mail, okay? So it's real important to be able to keep up with that type of information. So how can we help you? We have within our system is what's known as our certification module. This allows me to track every certification that I have across the country. It lets me know when the cert was issued. It lets me know when my recertification takes place and when my certification expires. I can set alerts that it lets me know that my certification in Massachusetts is going to expire on December 31st. It can let me know that 60 days in advance. And now I'm proactive instead of reactive. And I'm not relying solely on the communication that may or may not come from that jurisdiction. So that's one of the ways that we are now going to be able to help minority-owned businesses not only say, am I certified? Don't limit your certifications to just the city of Baltimore if you're located here. Expand your sphere of offerings to other areas. I cannot tell you how many cities I work in today where they are devoid of MBEs, and what they do is waive the requirements on contracts over and over and over again. So much so that I'm a part of a group right now that is examining waivers, specifically right now in the DC government, because they issue so many waivers of the CBE goals because they just say firms aren't available. That's money that we're leaving on the table because we have not gotten certified or have the right certifications. And many folks don't want to go through the process because it's an arduous and administrative burden. A tool like PRISM Certification Management can allow you to be proactive, manage the information, and make sure that you have what you need. So part of the way we're making this easy, and Bob talked about bringing innovations in this industry, we're going to be introducing some real powerful technology in the next 12 to 18 months to make it easier, even more easy, for us to manage our certifications and certification processes. But the other thing is all that documentation that they require us to have. How can we put that in a centralized place to make it easy for us to prepare the certification packages that we have to comply with, right? Whether they're new certifications, recertifications, and so it's just to make it easy. So this is some of the documentation that you can actually store right within the system. So when you basically post it once, and when it comes time for you to recertify or certify new, all your documentation is right there and ready to go. So that's the first thing on certifications. I believe in them, but they should only be a tool. It should be a means to the end, and not introducing yourself as I'm an MBE company. Now, you're a technology company that happens to have an MBE certification. Solicitation research. How many folks use e-procurement databases to keep up with solicitations that are coming out? All right, I see 3, 4, 5 hands. It's real important. Some of those are important to have. But like Bob said earlier, sometimes it's easier to do business within the customers that you have. It may take a little research to know whether you can expand in them, but that's what you want to begin to identify. So whether you're using the systems and or doing your own research, the question is where you're going to put it. Now, right now, before I started using my system, my research would be on sheets of paper where I'd taken some notes, or in a Word document where I may have taken some notes, but it wasn't centralized, okay? So what we have is the ability to do now is to keep track of every contract that we pursue, all right? Not only do we keep track of the contract, we keep track of how did they classify that contract, what was the NAICS code, so when it comes up again, I know that if I registered in their system, it's going to land. I also want to keep track of what were the dates? What were the dates that they awarded it? When is it going to come up? Because if I didn't win it this time, I want to set an alert to let me know 2 years in advance. So I can start targeting that project manager and that buyer so that they can start to like me and understand the tough decision that John talked about is that once they're comfortable with the incumbent, it's hard for them to change. So you probably need a 2-year window to start selling them on why they need to change, okay? Yes, sir?
Does your tool integrate with GovWin or tools like that?
It does not, but it integrates with most systems, so if you have a feed coming from GovWin, I feel 100% sure we could bring that data in. We interface with every other ERP system and other e-procurement systems, so we probably could do that. Thank you for that question. But the imperative thing is having information at your fingertips that can mobilize you to do smart things and make decisions, okay? Timing is everything. I'll tell you a short story. I went into one of my clients' pre-bid meetings. I'm there just to observe because I'm there to just to see how they do business. I wasn't there for the specific opportunity, but because they're a client, I wanted to understand their pre-bid process so I can help them get more value out of my system. So while I'm there, I look across the table, and this gentleman introduces himself. He hands me his business card. And I thought, oh, I recognize the car. I can't talk to him right now because the facilitator is going on with the meeting. But I'm like, I need to talk to you after the meeting. He's like, okay. So after the meeting, I realized this actually may be an opportunity. I wasn't planning for this, but so at the end, I get up, I introduce myself. He's like, oh, yeah, I remember you, Donna. We talked 6 months ago, da-da-da-da-da. It's like, yeah. I said, tell me about this opportunity. I said, you know, we do the kind of work that they're asking for, and is there an opportunity for me to team with you guys? He was like, man, if we had only talked sooner. He was like, oh, what do you mean? He's like, oh, we've been working on this opportunity for 2 years. And in fact, we wrote the RFP. So how do you think I feel? Because I'm there representing what I think is the minority business and women-owned business community. And this guy's telling me not only did he start marketing this opportunity 2 years ago, he formed his team about the same time 2 years ago. So there's really all these MBEs that have shown up at this pre-bid meeting thinking that there's an opportunity. They're timing. They're 2 years late for an opportunity that they're showing up that day thinking they could get on a team. Guys, we are so far behind, which is why I said I have to start teaching. You got to track your own stuff, right? So immediately, I should have been going to my database saying, well, gosh, now I could predict who's going to win the work because he said he helped write the RFP, and I truly believe them, okay? When is this contract going to expire? That's what I need to know. And I need to start 2 years prior to that trying to either understand whether there's an opportunity with this company as a partner, if I think they're going to win it again, or find another smart partner that can bring innovations that I believe that company can. And unless we start changing the timeline for our engagement, we just show up as MBEs and we're not prepared. So it's critical that we begin to analyze the opportunities that we're going after and be strategic. Does that make sense? So but you gotta, how you gonna keep a track of it all? That's why we said, this stuff is, hey, we make it available to the city, we gotta make this available to the very suppliers that are sitting in the room that should be benefiting from this. So our sourcing strategy makes that easy. Now, if you're a prime contractor, you need to do the same thing. I have 5 minutes, Bob. Oh my goodness, okay. Same kind of things is, if I'm a prime, I need to be just as smart about the MBEs I want to team with, because I want to go into the engagement with the right partners, okay? So it's just as important for me, if I'm the prime, to keep up with companies like yours, because when I go in with the right partners, I want to leverage the value you're bringing. Perhaps you have a relationship with the PM and I don't. I'm from out of town and I can benefit from that, and therefore you bring a value and I'm bringing a value, and that way it makes a smart partnership. I can advertise on the website of opportunities. Many of the construction companies, any construction firms in here besides Calvin? Okay, in the construction realm, they have to do matchmaking because they're oftentimes hiring a lot of big companies, large companies, and they need to hire lots and lots of MBEs to participate. So it's great for them to do matchmaking events and then being able to store that information in the system and then being able to correspond. They send out bids all the time to vendors. So our system will allow them to send out bids and show that they made a good faith effort to actually do the partnering. So that solicitation management is essential. And this is just a couple simple facts that I added to my slides overnight, is to make sure that you understand that with the amount of money that we're leaving on the table, each of the major U.S. departments, HUD, Transportation, EPA, Education, are spending billions and billions of dollars at the state and local levels. And when those dollars flow down, again, if we follow that money, they come with contract attachments that say you need to include women and minority-owned businesses. Typically, those goals are at minimum 10%, in some cases 20%. So if the federal government, U.S. Department of Transportation, is going to spend $77 billion, you do the math, 10% of that, and if they reach 2% of it, I'm telling you they're lucky, because they're saying our firms are not out here, which is why we have to increase the number of certifications that we have, and we need to make sure that those folks know that we are available for the work, because that money is being left on the table. So 3 quick things to know about contract management. So you won the contract. Where does the contract usually go after you sign it? In a file cabinet, right? I'm serious. Or maybe it gets scanned to your share drive, but it's not in a form that can be utilized, right? There's critical information that you need to keep up with, and you should be monitoring that contract, like the spend. Many companies now will publish on their website every payment that they make to a prime contractor. How many people want to know if your prime got paid if you have an invoicing to them? You do. You can go to that website and track when they got paid and therefore when you should be getting paid. Okay, too many of us are unable to manage our cash flow not because we did not perform great work, but because we're not being paid in a timely manner. But if you are able to use our system to track when those payments came in, you have a nice way to be able to send a nice little email to your prime. We understand that you've been paid, and by the way, when can we expect payment? And it's almost an automatic thing, okay? That allows them to know that you are a true steward of your contract management. Nothing wrong with it. You're just a smart business person, right? But you got to have that data in such a way that makes it easy. Couple other contract details real quick is the state compliance. If you start doing business outside of your state, you really have to keep up with filings. Filing for your foreign corporation. It's usually a fee. This is how that state makes money. But if you're getting a contract out of that state, it's okay to pay them their filing fees. The problem is if you forget to file, they will revoke you're good standing and you don't even know it, and then you'll be waiting for your payment and you'll wonder why am I not getting paid. It's because you're on their revoke list. So this is a great way to also keep up with all of those compliance requirements like filings, your tax filings, and all of that type of thing. So you set key contract alerts that will let you know when those things are due. You keep track of your attainment so you can manage those contracts and compliance requirements. It's just as important to know if your contractor reaches 50% of the payments and your portion of that work was at the beginning of the project. I'm sorry to tell you, they likely have missed you. But if you're keeping track of that, these are ways for you to be able to keep up and make sure that you're not left out and that you're included. So they're very sophisticated techniques to keep up with your primes payments as well as track your sub payments. And then if you're a sub but you have subs underneath of you, you can also track your payments to their subs. And so I'm going to close on this note related to labor management. Most of the time we take for granted the impact that we're having on the community. But a lot of us will get contracts and it will actually allow us to hire new employees. That's a great story to tell because oftentimes there's an economic benefit component that's in the contract that says, hey, tell us what's the benefit of your contract. Well, if you can tell the fact that you had a contract and you produced 5 high-tech jobs, and now you will do that again in this new project, that's something that someone will pay attention to. Oftentimes we don't have the information to track it. Because you're not in construction, most of you don't have to submit, like me, certified payrolls. If you're in the construction field, tracking certified payrolls is absolutely essential. It's a requirement of the U.S. Department of Labor and the state labor that basically says if you hire a painter, that painter must be paid a minimum wage amount. Not minimum wage, but a minimum wage base rate. And our system allows you to track to make sure that you're not violating. Subcontractors are being fined these days because the U.S. Department of Labor has really begun to come down on what they perceive as construction. In my realm, I think a lot of times what we find is that the MBE firms just don't know what a certified, some of them have never done certified payrolls before. It's just payroll errors and fraud. But when they come to do their reviews, that's not the way it comes away. Just like Bob said, you get certain questions asked of you in a certain manner. And next you know, you get a $100,000 fine for something that was an administrative error. So our system allows you to track your payrolls and make sure that you're in compliance. So I won't go into the other details of how we help support you, but if you think that these practices are relevant, whether you use a system like Prism or you create your own method of spreadsheets, the important thing I wanted to impart today is that manage your contracts, manage your certifications so that they become tools to fuel your growth. And ultimately, we'll see you guys at another level at the next presentation. Thanks very much. Any questions? Yes, John.
Donna, I have a couple of questions. You say you do a lot of business with major cities and things. Is your program affordable to the average business?
Absolutely. We have created an offering, which is actually on the last page of my presentation, to make it affordable for companies. And so to get just about everything I showed you other than the certified payroll, you can get this for about $300 a month.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And for certified payrolls, and I've run into this, because a lot of the certified payrolls, the NAS codes are for construction.
Yeah.
And say like we come in as a mover, and the only thing you can find close to a mover might be a plumber or something like that. Mm-hmm. How do you determine what the NAS code is when the NAS code is not directly in there for your industry?
Thank you for that question as well. So what we can do is recommend the NAICS codes that apply, and where we're seeing the solicitations being let for those types of NAICS codes. And then when it comes to the workers, if there's not a specific trade that applies to your workers, then we can develop custom trades, and you get those approved by your customer in advance, and therefore they'll take the wage and that classification that you've set up for those employees.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Has this been helpful? You guys going to be better stewards? Oh, one more question? Okay. Yes, Lance.
First of all, thank you for the information.
Sure.
And I just think that the idea about compliance and matching it with software is so revolutionary. How did you come up with that concept? It's very creative. I mean, I know in creation process is one of those things that, you know, it's hard. Everybody can't be creative, right? So how did you come up with that concept?
Thank you for the question. I'm going to give you a short answer. It could be a long story. So back in 2001, real quick, we were a subcontractor to a very prominent telecommunications company, where we were a subcontractor, and we were their premier MBE. And someone, as Dr. Boyd mentioned, that you had some knuckle bones, where they brought in a new project manager who decided we didn't need to be a prominent MBE, and they started moving our work to another company. And in that year, I lost over $1 million in business. And although I was reporting to my customer that, hey, I'm not being paid, back then, all of that paperwork, it was literally on paper, and it would go in piles. And when we went to our customer and asked them, why aren't you helping us, the MBE, that you encouraged us to sub, the answer was like, oh, we didn't get your paperwork. And I'm like, oh, yes, you did. And when he finally found it, it was buried under mounds and mounds of paper. And we knew our customers needed better visibility. And so we did research, and this was the 4th product we had tried to bring to market. We hired the right team of students, graduate students, that came and told us, hey, you shouldn't develop this product, and they told me why, and I said, thank you very much, and I sent them away, and we knew there was a need, and we just designed the product to address the need and brought the innovation to the market. And here we are. We went from that trial and tribulation is now my testimony that allowed us to launch into a national business.
Solving your own problem.
Well, and it was our personal problem, but the research revealed that it was a problem of so many MBEs that were in the same predicament that we were. Excellent. Thank you.